Okay. Nom time. Nom time. Oh, Azu, thank you so much for the follow too. Oh no, did I rip my foot? No.
We work too much. This is a pretty recent phenomenon.
Wait, my volume is falling low as shit.
We work too much. This is a pretty recent phenomenon, and so this fact makes us unusual historically. It puts us out of step with our ancestors. It puts us out of step with nature.
Yeah.
For reasons that will become obvious, anthropologists in the 20th century became very interested in the evolution of work. And so to answer some of their questions, they looked back to Stone Age societies. What they discovered surprised them. They found that while there were unique cultural variations all over the world, virtually all Stone Age people liked to work an average of 4 to 6 hours per day.
What?
They also found that most Stone Age people liked to work in bursts, with one fast day followed by one slow day, usually something like 8 hours of work, then 2 hours of work. 8, then 2. Fast, slow. Fast, slow.
Based.
These anthropologists found another thing. Pre-capitalist and pre-industrial societies all had their own ways of measuring chunks of time. Some would measure by how long it took to accomplish a specific task, or cook a specific meal, or walk a specific distance. But the odd thing is that when you compare all of these little markers that were used by different cultures, they were all somewhere in the ballpark of 30 minutes. It seems that in a world without clocks or phones or sundials, measuring the day in 30-minute chunks just feels good and natural to humans. Very few societies ever felt the need to break the day into smaller chunks than that.
Yeah.
It's hard to go much deeper than that from archaeological evidence alone. But there are other pre-capitalist and pre-industrial societies that we can look back to help us. There are excellent surviving records from medieval Europe that delve into this issue, so let's start there.
Based ancestors.
For virtually all of human history, most work has been agricultural work. This was also true of medieval Europe.
Yeah.
So when thinking about medieval workers, we shouldn't be thinking about cities. We should be thinking about workers in fields. For the first hour or so of the medieval workday, people would just trickle in at their own pace. The employer was usually expected to provide.
You would trickle in whenever the fuck you wanted? You would just join work whenever you felt like it?
Provide some food to the workers. So for this time, people usually had a chat and a bite to eat, but otherwise did nothing. As you can imagine, convincing people to get up and start the work for the day was often quite difficult. Employers complained about it all the time.
Oh my god.
Quite difficult. Employers complained about.
Nobody wants to work anymore. Isn't this like the entire thing that people isn't this the entire thing that like employers are talking about right now, about the fact that people don't want to work anymore in the 21st century, right? Everybody doesn't want to work anymore because, oh yeah, people are lazy, this, that. We're like insanely fucking high, like working people. Like our generation is crazy when it comes to work. Dude, they were just bing chilling. They got free food. They just, show up to work whenever the fuck they feel like it. And then when they're done with their fucking breakfast, they just chill.
About it all the time. After a couple of hours in the field, there would usually be a mid-morning break that could range from 30 to 60 minutes, where workers would have another bite to eat. When the sun was high in the sky and the day was...
Guys, the only break that I got during work times, if I had an 8+ hour shift, I would have 15 minutes after 4 hours, and then I have 30 minutes after another 4 hours, and then, or 2 hours, I guess, right? And then like if I had an even longer shift, that's all you get. You know, that's all you get. 12 hours, 1 15-minute break, 1 30-minute break, deal with it, right? These guys get a 1-hour break for lunch. Dude.
Was starting to get hot. Work would stop again for an extended period of time. Something like 2, maybe even 3 hours, depending on how hot it was that day. This period would begin with a larger midday meal that would be recognizable to us as lunch, and was followed up by, this is not a joke, nap time. In medieval Europe, siestas weren't just a Spanish thing, they were an everywhere thing.
Everywhere!
After returning to work, refreshed and rejuvenated, workers would intensify the pace of their work in an effort to finish everything up for the day. If they were done by the mid-afternoon, they could go home.
They could go home.
If they weren't, they would break for another 30 to 60 minutes.
They could, what? What the fuck? They could just leave? If I were to show up at my fucking teacher or at my fucking job and go like, hey boss, hey teacher, I finished all my homework, I finished all my assignments, I finished my tests, I finished everything, right? And you go like, I would like to leave early because I finished my work, I finished my stuff, right? They would be like, go suck a fucking dick, your work day is till the end of today. You know, it's like 5 p.m. It's still 5 p.m. It's still 4 p.m. It's still 8 p.m. I don't fucking know. They would just be like, no, get back to your workstation, figure something else out to fucking work on. And these guys just bing chilling. They get a 3-hour break / nap in the midday. They get 3 meals, right? They had breakfast, a snack, and then lunch. And then they get to leave whenever the fuck they want. Oh my god. What?
With more food provided before going back in for one last sprint.
They get another snack and it's all provided. It's all given to you by your fucking worker. Nah. No way. Nah. Oh my god.
Most of the time, workers didn't have to stay much later than this. But if it was harvest season and people were working late, there would often be a larger break in the evening with a larger meal provided by the employer. But this was rare.
Dude.
Workers might be in the field for like 8 hours a day, but when you account for all of the breaks, they would only be working for 4 to 6 of those hours. During the busiest times of year, they might be in the fields for like 12 hours a day, but with the breaks, they would only be working for 7 to 9 of those.
What is this paradise? What is this?
Hours.
Oh my god.
Notice the numbers we're playing with here.
Holy shit.
Stone Age peoples all over the world and agricultural workers in medieval Europe both liked to work 4 to 6 hours a day, even though each group had no knowledge or memory of each other. It seems that this is just a natural pattern that humans like.
Yeah.
Medieval workers would work longer during the harvest or during a crisis, but they didn't like to, and that's the point. Also notice the length of these breaks. Medieval workers measured the days in 30-minute chunks, just like their Stone Age ancestors. What else sticks out in the medieval workday? Notice how the workers were constantly eating. This was one of the perks of being a day laborer. Food was a worker's biggest expense, and so part of their compensation was that their employer would take care of the food for that day. It would be like if part of your compensation was that your boss paid your rent. It relieved a massive financial burden.
Holy shit!
One other thing to note was that work was generally understood to be a thing that happened during the day, and although there wasn't an exact science to this, a workday was broadly understood to be half of daylight hours. If there was an urgent need for people to literally work from sunrise to sunset, there was kind of a gentleman's agreement that this would count as 2 days of labor. What can we take away from all this? Work used to be a lot more informal and a lot more casual. Labor and leisure used to be intermingled. One was expected to relax and even nap on the job. Work was a part of a worker's life. Kicking back and passing the time wasn't just something workers did at home, it was equally something they did at work.
What the
Unless there was some sort of unusual crisis, workers were not expected to experience great stress while working.
Oh my god, if only, Red Chat. If only.
The week always began at a leisurely pace. Monday and Tuesday are described as days with a holiday spirit. Employers write of their difficulty in getting people to even show up. Thursday and Friday are described as fast days. Mondays and Tuesdays were slow, Thursdays and Fridays were fast. An echo of the Stone Age pattern of working. Fast, slow, fast, slow. Saturday was payday, and so it functioned as a hurry up and finish everything so that we can get the hell out of here day. It seems that under normal circumstances, Saturday was kind of a half day, although during busy seasons it could easily turn into another fast day, like Thursday and Friday. After the week's work was done and everybody got paid, workers got a full day off on Sunday. But by the 16th and 17th centuries, a new custom invented by workers disrupted this pattern. They called it Saint Monday. Saint Monday was kind of an unofficial holiday, where absenteeism was permitted and even expected on the first day of the work week. People were still flush with cash from last Saturday, and Monday was a slow day anyways, so it just organically became a thing that workers just didn't show up. Employers learned to tolerate it, and workers gleefully looked forward to it. Countless labor actions in early modern Europe can be traced back to some dumbass boss with something to prove, trying to crack down on their beloved Saint Monday. This was the real origin of the two-day weekend. It didn't come from government. It came from workers. They just did it themselves. And it came centuries before any legislature got around to making it official. But leaving aside Saint Monday, it's striking how different the mentality of medieval workers was from the mentality of workers today. Or let's flip that around. It's striking how different our mentality is today from that of our ancestors, going back hundreds, even thousands of years. Here's one specific example of that difference. Whenever medieval workers could afford to stop working, they did. Medieval Europe was not a culture in which people saved a lot of money. This isn't because they were primitive or selfish or anything like that. There just wasn't that much for poor people to spend their money on. Food, housing, clothing, that was pretty much it. If a worker was all set in those three categories, there honestly wasn't that much else available to them. This led to a phenomenon in medieval Europe where, after all of a worker's basic needs were met, the more they earned, the less they worked. To put it another way, medieval workers liked to spend most of their discretionary income on leisure. This isn't such a strange phenomenon. If you survey people today and offer them a choice between more money and more time off, most people would take more time off. It's just that under our system, people are never offered that choice. Or when they try to exercise that choice for themselves, they are either professionally punished or fired. In medieval Europe, people could make that choice for themselves. And whenever possible, workers worked less. A lot less.
Damn.
There were three major holiday periods where workers routinely took a big chunk of time off. Easter, Midsummer, and Christmas. Or for the uninitiated, March or April, late June, and late December. I would note that of the three, only the December holiday period made it into the modern era intact.
No, wait, no.
Really?
We still have 2 weeks off during Easter. Me and at least us in the Netherlands have like 2 weeks off during Easter.
Slowed down in the winter. Days were short and the work was short. Because of this, a tradition evolved called winter wages, where workers were paid half a day's...
Not as an actual worker, as a student. As a student, you get that time off. Yeah.
wage for half a day's work.
Like, the thing is, right, is that the fact that we're talking about workers here and not about students is insane, because workers had already put, like, straight put breaks, right? If you want to take a break right now, you get like 2-3 weeks a year, maybe, possibly, if you're fucking lucky. And if you want to get more, oh, that's unpaid. That's unpaid. I'm sorry. Figure it out, bro. Like, it's literally impossible to go on vacations anymore because, or like have days off, because like you just don't get enough. And like, it's
4-hour
insane.
workday at the very most. If you add in all the breaks, this would be maybe 2 to 3 hours of actual work. Winter wages were usually done for the months of December and January, and during this time, people took as much time off as they could afford. Workers spent their extra time on indoor labor that might not generate a profit. Home repairs, building new furniture, patching up or making new clothing. These were jobs best saved for the slow winter months. When you total up the estimated number of days worked by medieval farm laborers, things become quite stark. Researchers have found that Spanish farm laborers did not work for 42% of days in a year. In France, the number was more like 49%.
What? 150 days of time off, but more than 150 days.
English usually worked more, but this wasn't because they were naturally more industrious. It's because they were historically more exploited by
and also because the country is shit and it's raining 24/7, so you can't really grow crops and stuff like that without being on top of them all the time, because otherwise they get overwatered and they fucking die.
Their aristocracy. When there was a labor shortage in the 14th century, English laborers immediately used their clout to create more time off for themselves.
Clout!
For a time, English workers enjoyed 51% of days free from work. The fun-
No! No! How many vacation days per year is normal? It is normal to receive around 10 vacation days per year. 10 to 14 days per year after 1 year of service. 25 days, 10 days, 11 days, 10 days. 10 days? 10 days. 10 days in America. European Union legislation mandates that all 27 member states must, by law, grant all employees a minimum of 4 weeks of paid vacation. Workers are entitled to 10 days paid annually for each complete year of service. So like 20 days off. On average, employees in the US take 14 days off per year. Oh my God. While workers in European countries like Spain, France, Germany, and even the UK take 24 days, according to workforce tech solution company Skynova. The EU, on the other hand, requires at least 20 days of vacation for all employees, while the UK requires 28 days. This is legally, you're entitled to that much. The US has 14 days off per year? That's slavery. What the fuck? Why is it that much of a difference? Why do they have 182 days off? Oh my God. That's insane. Yeah, but depending on how scummy the company you work for is, you might not get all your days off, as in they might not allow you to take them and they just write it off as you not taking them. What? What do you mean they won't allow you? What do you mean? So you want me to bring you to court? You want me to bring you to court? This is legally not allowed. What the fuck? That's insane. Fucks. People in the medieval ages used to get an average of 150, 160, 180 days of off time. Off days, no work. What? This is ridiculous.
Funny thing about these numbers, 42%, 49%, 51%, is that once again, they echo how people worked in Stone Age societies. Almost every other day off. Fast, slow. Fast, slow.
So how are they expecting us to work nonstop?
Labor historian E.P. Thompson describes this work pattern as a natural human rhythm and a common preference in people across different regions, different cultures, and different times.
What the fuck?
For a point of comparison, consider a modern worker working 5 days a week. In a calendar year, that worker has 28% of days off. Add in the 10 or so public holidays that most countries have, and that worker now has 31% of days off. Add in 2 weeks of vacation, and that worker now has 34% of days off.
Bullshit.
Assume instead that they get 6 weeks of vacation, and that worker has 39% of days off. In order for a modern worker to even begin to rival the amount of time off enjoyed by a medieval French farm laborer,
look at that difference.
Modern worker would need to be provided with 3.5 months of vacation per year, plus weekends, plus public holidays. Yeah, medieval workers were operating on a level so far beyond us that it's difficult to even dream that big.
3.5 months of vacation. I don't get weekends off though. Yeah, I didn't either.
Up until the modern era, workers were paid by the day. The length of the workday could fluctuate throughout the year.
Fucking crazy.
But even during the busiest periods, workers might be in the fields for 12 hours at most. But as I've said, if you take into account all of the breaks and meal times and nap times, that might translate into 8 hours of actual work. And that was on the busy end of the spectrum. At other times, a shortened workday would often lead to less than 4 hours of actual work.
Less than 4 hours of work!
That all began to change with the proliferation of mechanical clocks. Cities and towns began building clock towers in their town squares in the late 14th and early 15th centuries.
Yay!
And before too long, churches and, yes, even some private businesses were inspired to have mechanical clocks of their own.
Not so
Arguably,
gay.
the most important clock ever built was installed at the Amsterdam Stock Exchange in 1611. The Netherlands were at the epicenter of this new capitalism fad that was sweeping Europe, and their shiny new stock exchange reflected that. Local Dutch governments tried to curb the capitalist fervor taking over their country by restricting stock trading to certain times of day. 2 hours in the summer and 30 minutes in the winter. Wait a second. See that? Even as late as 1611, Dutch stock traders had their own version of winter wages. It didn't even necessarily make sense for their job. It was just in the culture that that's what people did in the winter. Anyways, the Dutch wanted to issue hefty fines to any traders who violated these restrictions. So the stock exchange commissioned a giant state-of-the-art clock. This idea quickly proliferated to every stock exchange in Europe, and with this, the clock escaped the public realm of town squares and entered the private realm of business.
No.
All of a sudden, Capitalists wanted to prove how much of a capitalist they were by having their place of business install a mechanical clock, just like their local stock exchange. Clock mania had begun.
Can I say that clocks kind of give me anxiety because I keep on looking
Textile
at them whenever there's someone, whenever there's like a clock in my like peripheral vision when it comes to like class, school, taking tests, anything like that. Clocks used to like give me insane fucking anxiety because I kept on like looking at it and going like 5 more minutes, 10 more minutes, 15 more minutes, right? Literally counting down the fucking minutes before my lesson was over, before the test was over, before the time was gone, you know? Like I would do that all the time just because I was like in the range of one. I wouldn't do that with my phone that much because like my phone was just more for like leisure and stuff like that. I would listen to music on it. I would have like games and shit like that. I didn't really look at my phone for like the clock reason. But whenever there was a clock inside the classroom, like it would be so, I don't know, aggressive in a sense. Like boom, time. It's passing. It's passing. You don't got no time anymore. You don't have any time left. Go. Like yeah, it's distracting, man. It used to do that too. It's so nerve-wracking. See?
Transformed by the clock.
So I'm not the only one.
Some brain genius had the idea to connect the mechanical clock to a bell, which would signal the beginning and the end of the workday. This was a profound cultural shift, and workers really struggled to make sense of it. Understandably. Under the old system, and by the old system I mean the way that people have been working for all of human history.
Yeah.
Workers were hired by the day and measured the day in 30-minute chunks. They began and ended their workday accordingly within a broad 30-minute window. Now, workers were hired by the hour and measured the day in 60-second chunks. This was new and it was confusing. Many workers responded to the workday bell by doing the most logical thing under the circumstances. They just ignored it.
Oh.
It had never mattered before at precisely what minute one began or ended their work. So why should it matter now? But the capitalists cared. In fact, they would develop an unhealthy obsession with the clock. Before too long, the capitalists were able to convince city governments to get involved, who began issuing fines to workers who were late for the workday bell.
What the fuck?
Let me say this again. If a worker who worked for a private business was 1 minute late for work, the local government would fine them as much as an entire day's pay.
What?
This kind of thing had never been done before. It had never been part of the unwritten contract between bosses and workers.
Oh my
God! The capitalists
God.
just invented this new rule out of whole cloth, and they did it by joining hands with local governments across Europe.
That's
industrial capitalism and the heavy hand of government. Friends,
because like they work together, so they get money and they get money, and the only ones that fucking sit there and slave their asses off is the actual work. Oh my God!
The very beginning. The owners of the textile mills wanted to change the culture of work, and they did. But they did it by basically beating their workers into submission.
Oh my God. Why the fuck would you do that?
As capitalism and later industrialization swept across Europe, it brought with it an oppressive, even authoritarian relationship between workers and owners. Shortly after the introduction of the clock, the capitalist class killed the customary afternoon nap that had been part of the workday for as long as people could remember. Absolutely tragic. They also stopped providing food to the workers, which dumped an extra financial burden onto the working class. Mealtimes, which up until now had been long and informal and subsidized by the employer, were shortened and regulated down to the minute. The entire workday was just squeezed and squeezed until all of the air and all of the culture and all of the joy was taken out of it.
Yeah, so why would people have fun
But soon,
working anymore?
Even having a maximally productive workday wasn't enough. Workers quickly figured out that they could not trust the company clock. Many bosses liked to fiddle with the time so that the workday started a little bit too early and ended a little bit too late.
Oh my God!
One trick that bosses liked to pull with early company clocks was to rig them to the production line so that if there was any sort of technological problem, as there often was, then the clock would stop. Later generations of company clocks had mechanisms built into them that caused them to periodically pause during the workday, accumulating minutes, only to suddenly jump forward to the real time during breaks. It's funny, because the capitalists were the ones that invented this idea that the clock must reign supreme. They were the ones who had the government fine people if they were 1 minute late for work. They were the ones who unilaterally imposed this new social contract on workers. And then they were the ones to immediately break this new social contract. Why? No reason, really, just for a few extra bucks.
What?
Like I said, workers caught on pretty quickly, but when workers talked with other workers about how the company clock was inaccurate, it became standard practice within the textile industry to fire them on the spot. Fast forward 200 years. When pocket watches became common, workers did the sensible thing and brought them to work. Why wouldn't they? The capitalists had established long ago that being even 1 minute late for work was a mortal sin. Surely pocket watches would enable workers to be supernaturally punctual. This was exactly what the bosses wanted, right? But that's not how it went. For the first time ever, workers with pocket watches had physical proof that their bosses were tampering with the clocks. This practice was so egregious and so morally wrong that it became a political scandal, particularly in Britain, with genuine calls for regulation and reform. The capitalists responded to this scandal by, well,
taking their fucking
what do you
watches.
think they did? Imagine, you own a factory, you find out your middle managers are messing with the company clock. Word gets out, there are angry newspaper columns, there are debates in parliament, there's the threat of legislation coming down on your head, there's a full-blown political scandal. What do? If you said, ban pocket watches from factories, search workers before they enter the building, and fire anybody who complains about it, then congratulations, you're a fascist. And yeah, that's exactly what the capitalists did.
Oh my god.
By now, it should be clear that the mechanical clock was a tool used by the industrialists to subjugate and exploit their workers. It was never about productivity or efficiency, because they proved over hundreds of years that they would rather fire a productive worker than run an accurate company clock. That was where their priorities were. It was never really about profits, was it? It was about power.
That's messed up.
20th century Canadian socialist George Woodcock, who wrote at length about what he called the tyranny of the clock. Damn, he's got some fucking
bushy ass eyebrows, dude. Holy.
And because without some means of exact timekeeping, industrial capitalism could never have developed and could not continue to exploit their workers. The clock represents an element of mechanical tyranny in the lives of modern men, more potent than any other exploiter or any other machine.
Fucking weirdos. That's so messed up,
All of the trends that began with the mechanical clock kicked into overdrive with the widespread adoption of artificial lighting. This is what finally killed winter wages. Now, there was no need to take it easy when the days were short. With artificial lighting,
you could
capitalists
just keep the entire
started
day,
treating every season like it was harvest season. That's how factory workers got stuck working 12, 14, 16-hour shifts. Not just during the busy season, but all year long.
Jesus.
That familiar feeling where you leave work in the winter and it's already dark out? That wasn't a thing until like 1802. That was a thing that was invented by industrial capitalists in order to maximize productivity. The industrial capitalists did not stop with the tyranny of the mechanical clock, and they did not stop with the 12, 14, or even 16-hour workday. In time, they expanded their reign of terror to target public holidays. Within a matter of decades, public holidays that had existed for hundreds of years were systematically suppressed in favor of more work.
What the fuck?
We talked earlier about the late medieval period, when workers were able to live lives where they had 42%, 49%, 51% of days off. Only 200 or 300 years later, workers had to learn to survive with only 15% of days off. The industrial capitalists would have taken more if they could, but the church mounted a defense of Sunday as a day off.
Yes!
Mostly.
Good.
At the end of it all, the lives of workers had been completely transformed. English workers in the 19th century were working 80% more than English workers in the 17th century. The country had never been richer, but you would never know it by looking at the workers. Over the century leading up to this, the British GDP had grown by 50%. But over the same period, worker pay was not just stagnant, but in decline. They were doing almost double the work for less pay. And the transformation wasn't just in the number of hours worked. Owners and bosses used their leverage to force their workers to live in a tiny authoritarian world run by capitalists.
Jesus. There's like 5 more minutes left, 10 more minutes.
In the culture of work has always been fascinating to me, and so I tried to look back to where it first began. When and why did we shift from the more casual and laid-back work culture that came out of medieval Europe to the more totalizing and authoritarian and inhuman work culture that came out of the Industrial Revolution? I think I've figured out where things started to shift, and I think I've got it pinned down to the exact year. 1664. In 1664, some absolutely psychotic capitalist named Richard Palmer, cursed be his name, paid the church in the town of Wokingham, England, to ring their bell at precisely 4 o'clock every morning and at precisely 8 o'clock every evening.
What? Why?
He did this because he was still seeing the cultural evidence of winter wages, where workers woke up later during the slow winter months and worked half as hard as they normally did.
4 a.m.?
As a capitalist, this drove Palmer crazy. He felt that it was deeply important for workers to be up 4 hours before sunrise every day, even if they didn't really have any work to do. If they didn't want to wake up on their own, he would do it for them. So he had the church bell ring at 4 o'clock every morning, 4 hours before sunrise. He also felt that it was his job to tell people when to go to bed, so he had the church bell ring at 8 o'clock every evening. Also, shout out to this church for straight up abandoning their religious mission and surrendering to this capitalist weirdo.
Oh my God.
Way to go, guys. I hope the money was worth it. According to Richard Palmer and this new breed of 17th century capitalist coming up with him, private time was an outdated concept. This new generation of capitalists wanted a say in how workers were spending their hours at home. They even wanted a say in what time they went to bed. They had a totalitarian worldview. As far as they were concerned, all time was company time. Inspired by the work of Richard Palmer, this particular form of abuse became a fashionable trend in England. Psychopaths all across the country started co-opting churches and victimizing towns, all in the name of productivity. 20th century Canadian socialist George Woodcock writes of this new breed of capitalist. The new capitalists, in particular, became rabidly time conscious. Time, here symbolizing the labor of workers, was regarded by them almost as if it were the chief raw material of industry. But this newfound obsession with time and productivity didn't stop there. When this new generation of capitalists left their places of business, they would see their workers getting off work for the day. And what did they see them doing? Standing around in groups, chatting, relaxing on public benches, walking into public houses to grab a meal or, God help us, a drink. All of this public recreation bothered Palmer and his friends immensely. Palmer's obsession with the clock coincided almost exactly with the rise of English newspapers. And what did this first generation of newspapers like to discuss? They liked to discuss the problem of the poor, and specifically the problem of the leisure activities of the poor. The capitalists were very open about this. They said that the only legitimate leisure activities for the poor were mental cultivation or religious study. Basically, studying Latin or studying the Bible. That's what poor people should be allowed to do for fun.
What do you
Anything
mean?
other than that, they argued, was corrosive to the culture. For those keeping track at home, bribing the church and turning it into a private tool for the capitalist class, not corrosive to the culture.
Maybe mental torture,
Relaxing on a public bench after work, corrosive to the culture. These people were demons. That's what the capitalists wanted.
No, actual demons,
no life
literally.
Outside of work. No hobbies. No idleness. No relaxation. No days off. Nothing.
They're just trying to brainwash them. And the worst thing is, right, is that they actually fucking succeeded. They succeeded in brainwashing them.
Just work and someone else's profit.
It's insane.
20th century Canadian socialist George Woodcock concedes that mechanical time is valuable as a means of coordination of activities in a highly developed society, just as the machine is valuable as a means of reducing unnecessary labor.
Time to time travel and kill Palmer.
He argued, the modern use of the mechanical clock did not...
No, but seriously, can you imagine if that guy, like, if that didn't exist, if this wasn't started ever? Can you imagine how fucking different our world would have been at this point? I mean, honestly, all of us wouldn't have existed. We wouldn't have not been alive. Most likely, we would have been, you know, literally evaporated from the planet of Earth. But I feel like we would be in such a better situation than we are right now. Maybe not technology-wise. Like, we might have had, like, 1,000 more extra years of... Yeah, we might have needed 1,000 extra years of development. Because of course, like, as you saw, productivity increased a shit ton, so they got like a boom of, you know, stuff super quick. But like, that would have been insane. That would have been fucking crazy. No %. But happiness, that's one thing. Thank you so much, Holy Topic. Thank you for the 11 months. Welcome back. Life will like
reduce unnecessary labor. It did the opposite. Hurried meals. The regular morning and evening scramble for trains or buses, the strain of having to work to time schedules, all contribute to digestive and nervous disorders, to ruin health and shorten life.
Damn, bro.
What to make of all this? We are richer as a society than ever before, but somehow we are less free. Workers have lost so much, not just our afternoon naps and our holidays, but our autonomy, our...
You know what's funny? I went to the doctor and I told her that my ADHD, right, is very tiring at times, where I'm like so fucking exhausted from literally just existing half of the day that I will, around like 3-4 p.m, I will, sorry, I'm fucking model tracking. I will get up, I will lay down in bed, and I will take a nap for like an hour. And she was like, don't do that. She was like, if you take naps in the middle of the day, you're just going to mess up the rest of your fucking, like, you know, evening. And you're not going to be able to fall asleep at night anymore because, oh yeah, your rhythm is going to be broken and shit like that. That's bullshit. That's just called getting old, Mifuyu. No, it's not. It's called fucking living, Dizzy. Children also have this. People, do you know how important it is for kids in their teenage years to get rest? Do you know how important it is for them to get adequate fucking sleep during the night? But half of these fucking people take like 4-hour sleep, 3-hour sleep in like so that they can finish their fucking studies, because otherwise it's impossible for them. Like, they need it so bad. Children need it because they grow. Adults don't grow. Yeah, sorry to say, but your brain continues developing till you're in your fucking mid-30s. So everybody under 30 years old is actually a child because of fucking recent like university studies that showed that the brain continues developing till your mid-fucking 30s, early 30s, right? your brain is still a thing that develops till fucking late in your lifetime. And if you just disregard it and just don't do anything about, like, you know, your mental health, your physical health, you're just gonna fucking deteriorate. Have you seen how stupid children are recently? There's literally teachers complaining about how dumb they are, and that 7th graders are on the level of 4th graders at this point, because the only thing that they get is they get feed digital time, they get fed fucking tablets and shit like that. They don't have like normal fucking naps anymore. They don't take breaks. They don't have parents that take care of them and teach them shit. It's insane. It's fucking ridiculous.
I personally need to take naps in middle of the day, once or twice a week, but I also got a condition where every now and then I don't sleep for more than 1 hour in 4 days.
That is insane. I feel like it also really depends, because I've heard from a lot of people that do like fasting and shit like that, or people that just take naps. So there's 2 types of people, right? There's the people that like either take a shit ton of sleep, right? They go like, they sleep like 7-8 hours a night, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less, right? And then there's the people that either you're a fucking psychopath and you don't take any sleep, you know, you take 3-4 hours of sleep and you just go through the rest of your day, or you literally take like 1 hour nap, you get up, you work for 3 hours, 1 hour nap, you get up, you work for 3 hours, 1 hour nap, you get up, you work for 3 hours. I've actually seen some people like this, like people that are like bodybuilders and shit like that. They do this type of shit. It's insane. They do that because their body like can still detoxify in that like little amount of time without like letting your brain go into the REM sleep, so it doesn't go into deep sleep as much. And yeah, that's not good for you either, 100%. But hey, like it really depends. But like, I don't know, man, the fact that you're like, that people are working 8 to 12 to 14 to 16 hours at this point, like in healthcare you don't get any breaks. Like what happened to healthcare, bro? Do people get breaks? No. I don't know, man. My book says that they develop even in 40s and deteriorate without sleep. No fucking way. Your book says that the brain develops even in your 40s and that it deteriorates without sleep? Damn, dude. We're gonna be so stupid in a few fucking like years. Like